Okay, so you have watched the step 1 video, and now you are at step 2 video, which is creating the amortization schedules. So here, this is right here in the directions, and here's the link for the lease calculator on our website. And I'm just going to click this so you can see what it looks like on the website. Here's all your information, and you're going to go right here to lease calculator for creating amortization schedules. So you're going to click that. I've already got mine open, so I'm just going to shut this down. So I'm going to open up my lease calculator right here, and I'm going to move this bad boy over here. Now this lease calculator, a lot of this information you have already filled out on your lease implementation schedule here that we went through in step 1. So I have done this. I've linked my lease calculator spreadsheet to my lease implementation schedule because the information comes directly from there. So I'm going to go right here to my lease calculator. Your financial statement date, if you're filling, depending on which year you're filling this out for, because we are in fiscal year 2022. GASB 87 takes effect for fiscal year 2022. This is going to be 6/30/2022. Your lease commencement date. This part is just a touch squirrely. So this information, if you read it right here, tells you what the lease commencement date is. This information is applicable for leases that start after 7/1/2021. But if you have a lease that started before 7/1/2021, basically the date is going to be 7/1/2021, unless it pays at the start of a lease, and then it would be the date of like 7/15/2021. So this will pay right here on 7/15/2021. But when we calculate our lease schedules, you'll know if you did it right or not, putting the date in, and I'll show you kind of at the end. But just sort of pay attention to this date, because this is just a little squirrely for the leases that came into existence prior to 7/1/2021. So we walked through earlier in step 1, governmental fund, how you figure out whether or not it's a governmental fund or not. But I will do a real quick run through for the next 30 seconds. So if you're not interested in this, just fast forward 30 seconds. But if you go back to the lease implementation schedule, right here, you're going to, whatever fund your lease is recorded in, there is a tab on the lease implementation schedule called Index of Funds. You can find your fund and then just go across and find whether or not it's government or business type. And so that'll tell you whether or not the lease is recorded in a business type or governmental fund. Okay, this is just going to be your agency business area code and your agency name. This is your lease ID number. Keep in mind, it's 15 characters allowed, no special characters permitted, and it has to be a unique ID number per each individual lease. Now, also keep in mind, you are going to have to create a lease calculator for every single lease that you have. For most agencies, this isn't going to be too big of a burden, because we've looked through at most agencies, and maybe 3 or 4 leases. There's just a handful of agencies that have more than that. So we've gone through and done a sample one for you to see, so you can see how it works. So I have mine linked, so you can see it's tied to H7, which is lease copy equipment. So I'm just going to select equipment right here. And my lease copy equipment is depreciable. My useful life is 5 years. And remember, you can reference on our website how to determine the useful life of the asset. Does the lease contain a purchase option? You're going to answer yes or no. Again, you've already answered these questions on the lease implementation schedule. Was this lease presented as capital lease in the previous financial statement period? Generally, the answer is going to be no. I think if it was a Presidio lease, it was presented as yes, I believe, but I'm not the expert on this. I'm just doing the video for Kelly. Kelly is the expert on this. Okay, so you're just going to go through and finish answering these questions right here. If you've got any modifications, you're going to need to make sure you note this. Your length of the lease, make sure you read these directions here, what a cancelable lease is. So if your lease is 5 years, but you've got a 2-year extension, whatever, you want to make sure you're paying attention right here. And you want to make sure you're also paying attention on whether or not your lease is monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, whatever, and do your drop down here. So for your lease calculator, it is important in terms of calculating the interest payment, whether or not you're paying at the start of the payment or at the end of the payment. So make sure this is correct. It can materially alter your amortization schedules, and you don't want to get in trouble with your auditors because you are responsible for making sure this information is correct. So pay attention here that you've got it correctly stated. Your annual interest rate is 5.26. We selected it here. Again, I talked in step 1 how to go through your annual interest rate. I will also do a separate video that goes deeper into the annual interest rate, but there is also a presentation on our website, just a handout on our website that talks to you about how to find your interest rate if you haven't been given an explicit interest rate, so how to determine your implicit interest rate. So if you have a variable payment, for this one we have said no, and we're just going to go down, and I'm going to show you, just kind of walk you through the variable payment schedule here. But so our payment, we know, I've linked it here, is $88, and let me get back here, and I know I've linked it back to my implementation schedule. I know there's 27 payments left, so I'm just going to drag this down for 27 payments, and so there you go. Now if right here your payments increase, then you would build that increase into this amount. So say in year 10, in payment 10, the payments increased to 90, you would just change that to 90 and drag that down. And then if it changed to 100, you would put in 100 here. So that's how you would do your variable payments. Okay, so we've got the information in. We are comfortable with everything we've got, and now we're going to hit this calculate lease information button, and this will trigger the macro to do the calculation for us. So I'm going to hit calculate lease information. Okay, so this tab is named after our lease number, and if you scroll over here, since we are paying at the end of the period, this should start, this payment is registering at the end of the period. If it should pay at the beginning of the period, it should be the date at the beginning of the period. And you can see the payment is $88 in total, but of that 88, we are calculating that 78 is related to principal and $9.80 is related to interest. And by the end of the period, we have amortized this down to 0, basically, so that the interest is almost at 0 by the end of the period. So it is very important here to check. I'm going to scoot this over to a different screen, and we're going to go back to our lease implementation schedule because I want to show you on your lease implementation schedule to make sure we have it right. Sorry. Okay, I have that the expiration date is 9/14/2022. So the last payment should be in September of 2022. And you can see on here that we have it at 9/30 9/30/2023. So that's telling me we have done something wrong. We have 1 year too many payments. So really, it needs to stop here. So this is great. I'm glad I get to do this because I get to show you how to fix it. So you are going to need to delete, okay? And you need to go back here, and we know that we have 12 payments too many because it should have stopped a whole year early. So I'm just going to delete 12 payments. Okay. And now we're going to go calculate lease information again. Let's scroll over. And that is right. It is paying through the end of the month on 9/30. And I know it says 9/30 and the other one says 9/15, but that's okay. It's still correct in terms of it's paying at the end of the month. So if you go back here, so our expiration date is 9/14/2022. So good, we've got it right. So you need to make sure you pay attention to that when you do it, that you've got the correct number of payments involved. And that's sort of